Hey guys, this is your host Vinyl Man Jebb, and you're tuned into an older episode of mine. This is a Jebb and Greencast, one of the ones that were more towards the end of Jebb and Greencast. We're going to go all back and forth throughout the whole era of Jebb and Greencast, and once a week post up or something like that, post up older episodes. But this is one I did on my own towards the end when Tyler left for his own podcast, and so I was still doing them, and then that's when I decided to do Unlikely Places. This is with Rob Lane. Rob Lane is from the Straight to Video podcast, and it's a really fun time talking with him because I love his podcast, and now we're partnered with him and never saw it come full circle, so it's very cool. He sponsors our shows. We're partnered that way, and it's very exciting. So thank you for tuning in, and Rob, thank you for letting me interview you. It was a very awesome experience. Thank you. Hey everybody, this is your host Vinyl Man Jebb on the Jebb and Green podcast, brought to you by RoboJack Records. Excited to have Rob Lane on. He's a host of Straight to Video podcast. He's over 100 episodes now. We recorded this a little while ago back. It's been a while trying to get everything out of the funk I was in and editing everything. Finally got the Licorice Quartet video up, so Rob Lane's coming next. Coming right at you. We'll fade right into it. Rob, how are you?
I'm good, Jebb. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
No problem. First question I want to just start off right away is, when did you start the Straight to Video podcast?
Like many current podcasters, I started it during the first lockdown, around when would it be? Probably around May, June, something like that. So I'm coming up to 1 year anniversary to it, but it's something I've been thinking about doing for, probably about 5 or 6 years, something like that. I was a big fan of Kevin Smith and his podcasts. Mm-hmm. He was the first guy who introduced me to him, and I used to love listening to his when I was going on to gigs or driving to rehearsals. I always had a Kevin Smith, Jason Mewes podcast on. But I am the least technical person on the planet, so it took me a while to get my head around all the gear and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I think it'd be simple. I think it'd be just mic and just mic and record, but no, it's so much to it.
Well, they say you can do that. They say, just get your phone and go for it. But I wanted it to be at least kind of a decent level in quality, because I've listened to podcasts before and turned them off if it's unlistenable. Yeah. So I needed to hook people in somehow.
You've done a great job. I started watching, when I told you, I think it was a couple months ago I started. I mean, the Ken video was what got me interested in your podcast, which is great. Right. Because you get, that's why you do a podcast. You hope to gather the fans of the people that you're interviewing to then check out your other episodes too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Here at the Jebb and Greencast, we've been very fortunate to have people check out one episode and then sub, and then all of a sudden we have listeners that are coming in. So it's been
that's right. Incredible. Yeah. I mean, I check out I'm one of those people who check out all the statistics and the downloads of each episode. Then all of a sudden you'll see pretty much every episode's got one new listen. So it's that must be a new subscriber downloading them all or something like that. So it's always encouraging. But the Ken Stringfellow episode was great. I mean, I've been a Posers fan for since the mid-90s. Yeah.
Our show knows.
So it was great. The guy was awesome. Yeah. Someone who's been out there so long, got so many stories.
Incredible
just
stuff
pleasure
too.
to speak to.
Yeah, yes, I was surprised at as many stories as he has. He never runs out of material to tell, and it's incredible. And it's wow, it's like he's been on a million podcasts. My first interview ever was with him, and it was just something so special. At 17, it was whoa, just opened my world to a whole new thing, and it was.
How great is it though when you reach out to somebody from one of your favorite bands and
Yeah, I was like, is there money involved? Something, just because it's just you get so shocked. You're like, you serious? And it's just I've been try to reach out to artists now that are newer and upcoming, and the management's hard to get a hold of and hard to
right. But
with these older guys that I've looked up to, and these people that you're trying to interview too, is they who have the management know the bands that I've had on the show, and it's I thought it'd be a leadway, but a lot of times they're usually busy with promotions, or you got to catch them at the right time. But I've been so fortunate.
Usually it is. If they've got a new record out, it's usually a lot easier to get them because they're on the promo trek.
They're anything. We'll take anything. And it's great. I mean, I've been trying to get a hold of Emma Blackery. I really like her stuff, and she's newer. Highly recommend her to anybody that's listening.
What kind of stuff?
Kind of like Paramore. So they're
cool.
pretty much like Paramore. She's like Paramore, but she's got her own style and all original way of doing it too, a mix of everything. But that's how it just I hate comparing people because they're their own person, but it's as humans we do that, just to make sense of it. But it's there's a lot of Scottish bands that probably are tired of getting that they're
hey, you sound like Teenage Fan Club. It's like,
well, it's not a bad comparison.
No,
I'll
it
take
isn't.
that comparison.
No, I love that. My next question for you is, what made you want to start the Straight to Video podcast?
Well, I don't know if you're aware. Probably around, I think it was in the early 2000s. I had like a music magazine fanzine type thing called Trash Pit. Yeah, it was like the proper old school print publication. Because I was always a fan of fanzines growing up, and when I first got into music,
cool.
fanzines were always cool. And it got to the point, as you probably know, I'm a big fan of like melodic hard rock, the old 80s, early 90s Sunset Strip stuff, which went totally out of fashion in the mid to late 90s. You couldn't find
Like Praying
any
Mantis,
information
stuff like
on
that?
No, I'm talking all your Bon Jovis and your Poisons.
Oh,
and
okay.
all the proper Sunset Strip stuff, the big hair metal, as a lot of people call it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that went totally out of fashion. So nobody was covering that kind of stuff. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to find out myself what these bands are doing, because I know they're still around. And it was kind of, internet was getting, well, it was pretty big around then, but like MySpace was coming in and stuff. So I thought, I'm going to reach out to a few of these bands. And the first one, this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how cool it is when you reach out to certain musicians and they get back to you. One of the first guys was a guy called Steve Brown from a band called Trickster, who were based out in New Jersey. And he had a new band called 40 Foot Ringo. And I just emailed him through his website, and he got back to me. He was like, yeah, I'll do an interview. And I was like, dang, this is awesome.
It's powerful.
So yeah, it's great. So yeah, that was what the magazine did I had it for like 3 or 4 years and got to meet some cool people. That's how I got introduced to Bowling for Soup. I got to interview Butch. Yeah, I got to interview Butch Walker. I don't know if you're a Butch Walker fan.
I've heard of Butch, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great. So that was my kind of like introduction into interviewing bands. And then I got busy with my own music for a few years and got to the point where I was missing those connections with other musicians and meeting new people, which is something I love to do. So podcasting just kind of seemed the obvious
especially
route.
during the COVID times too, when everybody's hurting and they just want to get their name out, their story out before other things. And I noticed a lot of times it's just great to be able to contact somebody over Facebook and just say, hey, I really like your stuff and would love to have you on. And we've had that happen. And I know with us we had some scheduling stuff, but of course that comes up. But it's great to finally have you on. finally get down and say, hey.
Oh man, I love doing this stuff. And
I haven't really listened to a lot of podcasts, and I really enjoy yours. It's funny because it's one of those things, like I make a lot of podcasts, but I feel like a lot of musicians too, they fall on a thing where it's like you don't listen to your own genre as much. Because it's like you don't want to copy or steal. And then it's like with podcasts, for me, it's like I love putting one on if I'm doing like doing something else, because it's great. That's
great. The beauty of them. I think that's why they've took hold.
And I think that's what it is, because it's like if you're driving, it's just somebody to listen. It's comfort, and it's the same with music. So it's great. And then to have something combined, like a radio show that does both, it's like, okay, that's heaven. And that's what
I'll have some of that.
That's what we've been doing here. So it's great. And so how long have you been doing music for?
Let me think. I mean, I've always been a music fan, as most people. But I don't know if I was late to it or not, but I didn't pick up a guitar till I think I was like 16, pretty much exactly around the time when I heavily got into music through like all the rock bands, which I was talking about. So like around 89, 90 was when I was really diving headfirst into music. And then just the logical thing is, oh, these bands look cool in these videos. I want to have a shot at that. So I brought a guitar from a friend of mine, which was like £10, which probably works out at like $15 or something. It was like the biggest piece of crap ever. And I remember bringing it home and just sitting with it on my knee and thinking, what the hell do I do with this?
How do I make this work?
And it was terrifying. But yeah, just from then, just the logical thing, just played guitar for a couple of years, then traded over to bass.
There you go.
And then just kind of got into local bands and just building it up from there. Just not a especially unusual route, just the usual one, really, making friends and contacts. And I think I figured out early on that everybody needs a bass player, and they're a little harder to come across than guitar players.
They are, because it's like I've even dabbled in bass myself. I record bass in the studio. A lot of my new album coming out is all I'm on the bass, and it's like I wanted to just try it because I love playing the bass. I have the stubby fingers, so it's perfect. Yeah, it's like it's hard to play those. Like if I don't have those long spider fingers for guitar, it's tough, And it's just like, oh man, I can't reach that note that's 8 frets down.
Are you a pick player or a finger player when
I
it
am
comes
pick,
to bass?
but I do for bass, finger. I do both.
Yep.
In the studio, I do picked because it picks up better on the phones. I noticed that, like, when you go to record, like, if the frequency is a little too low, it won't pick up as good. So it's like I've done picked for studio, but when I'm out live or anything, I'm always playing fingers.
Yeah.
I'm actually restoring a 60s Tedesco, a little Tesco. Is it Tesco?
Yeah.
Tesco bass. Trying to just, get a Fender loaded pick guard for it. My dad and I are doing it together, and it's just like I want to definitely get that thing loaded just for the look. It's a no-namer, so I'm definitely going to put some kind of my own thing.
Is your dad a musician as well?
He was when he was younger, but he's very big into like fixing guitars, and he's basically my roadie.
Oh, nice.
And
keep him close.
Oh yeah, of course. He's always been the push. Both my parents have always pushed to keep the music alive, which has been great because I know there's a lot of people out there that wish they had that, and it's like I've been very fortunate and lucky, especially falling on hard times and not having a job at the current moment and stuff like that, that the music's been there for me. And I've made some radio hits, and it's incredible to have that experience.
Nice.
So it's like, ooh.
Oh, that's great.
And it's just great. And then the podcast, of course, I had a guest come on a little while ago back, Shane Tutmarek of Delar. And he came on and he was like, you got to keep doing the podcast because that's how you're going to get your music out there. It's a weird way of doing it, but it's the truth. Because
that's why they say it's like these podcasts are like a platform for whatever your other business or your passion is. It's a great launching platform for it as well. So for sure, man. Keep at it.
Yeah, my gal and I want to start a 80s retro podcast. So that's,
nice.
We'll definitely have you on as a guest if that one gets started.
I'm in already. Count me in.
Perfect. Yeah, because we just have a nice roundtable discussion. So you played with Jarrett from Bowling for Soup. What was that like?
Oh man, Jarrett is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. As I mentioned earlier, I got to know them through, I basically interviewed them for my old Trash Pit magazine. And Bowling for Soup was one of those bands which kind of encompassed, they were a pop punk band if you want to categorize them. But you could tell they had these old school hard rock influences. They always wore it on the sleeve or wore a t-shirt at a gig or had references in their songs. So when I was struggling to find a band to fall in love with around the early 2000s, they were the perfect band. And I think I've mentioned it in a podcast before or online or something like that. But I remember the first day, well, not the first day, the time I met them to do the interview, I was early for the interview. The band was still on the bus because I think they'd had a rough night the night before. So we were waiting for them in the dressing room to do the interview, and they came in. And this stuff like this always makes an impression with me. Jarrett said hello to me as they walked in, eye contact, a proper welcoming hello, whereas a lot of the people would just like walk past you because they don't know you or something like that. He made an effort, and that still sticks with me today. And
it's awesome.
We just became friends. It was quite, I remember I took a t-shirt I was playing in a band called Dip, D-I-P. And we were kind of similar to Bowling for Soup in a way. We didn't know of them or anything, but we had a couple of large gentlemen in the band, similar to Bowling for Soup. We were playing like these quirky rock songs. So I thought, I'm going to take them a t-shirt and a CD. So I gave each member of the band a t-shirt and a CD. Did the interview. Interview was awesome. Came out to watch the gig, and Jarrett came out wearing the t-shirt. I was like, holy shit, you've not even heard the band and you're wearing my t-shirt. It was so cool. And we just stayed friends over the years.
Awesome.
That was 2003. So I went to see Van Halen in Dallas and stayed with Jarrett for that. And yeah, we just became buddies, and he got in the band People on Vacation, which is kind of a side project to Bowling for Soup. And I was just cheeky. I said, if you ever need a bass player, let me know. And he's like, we've got some UK shows coming up. Yeah. Saves us flying some guys over if you want to do it. Do you know any drummers? So I got my friend Mickey to play drums. And yeah, we went out as kind of like the UK
version,
half of sick. People on Vacation. And
we saw them.
That was, sorry.
Oh, no, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a dream come true. He's not only a cool guy who I consider a friend, but he's also like a musical hero as well. So yeah, just so good. Nothing but good words to say.
They came around here, and I believe, I forget the band who the bass player was from for them here, but they came to a Apple Fest here in Connecticut, and it was free. and it was Bowling for Soup, and I said, I am not missing that. I've been wanting to get tickets to see them for so long, and I didn't get to meet them or anything, which was a bummer because
when was this?
A huge fan. This was I want to say a couple years ago. I want to say it was like 2 years ago. It's probably 2019. It might have been 2019. It might have been like one of the
they would have
shows.
Had Rob, the new bass player.
Yeah, and he's from Patent Pending. Yep, it was him. So he signed my hat, I think. I think that was
Rob's a good dude.
Real nice guy.
Great.
I actually got to go to free with I play Magic the Gathering with a bunch of friends, and there's a card shop that's near a town of ours, so we play a lot of card games and tabletop, like D&D and stuff there too, and it's just a lot of fun. And so like the owner and I became really good friends, and she brought me up there. She's like, I'll bring you. She's like, I'm a huge Bowling for Soup fan. I'm like, hell yeah. Because my parents went to a Queen cover band that night, and I was like, guys, don't buy me a ticket. I'm going to see Bowling for Soup. I am not passing this up.
How was the show?
Fantastic. I love that just the whole atmosphere. I yelled out Greatest Day, and Jarrett looked at me and he goes, great song, but not on the set list. I'm like, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I would love to have him on the podcast at some point. It'd be great to talk with him, just music.
He's awesome.
Yeah. But it's just so cool. Just one of my favorites. I grew up with them. I grew up with Drunk Enough to Dance, and just...
Oh, man.
Emily is probably one of my top favorite songs, and then I just went from there. And even their hits are like phenomenal. And then I found out later on they're the Phineas and Ferb theme song. I'm like, oh boy, that's interesting.
And he's also the voice for Chuck E. Cheese these days as well.
Yeah. I noticed like the digital. I was like, the digital mouse is different, and I'm like, that voice sounds so familiar. Oh yeah. And I was like,
there
that's
you go.
Cool. Yeah, my dad's a huge fan of Greatest Day. It's one of his favorites, and I love their cover of Matthew Sweet, Sick of Myself. I was
just listening to that today. Not the original. It popped up on YouTube.
Yeah, that's great to have that covered by a band that I like. It's like because of that, I got into like a mood the other day of just looking up other bands covering other bands, and like found out that like The Offspring did a bunch and all that. But it was like for the Bowling for Soup one, I was just so surprised at the Sick of Myself, and they're a phenomenal band. And it just like I was worried because I love Matthew Sweet so much. It's like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But it didn't. It actually blew me away, and I was like, this is an awesome cover. And I showed my dad, and he's like, yeah, it's great. Because usually
you've got the album, which that's on the.
I don't physically. I've heard it on YouTube, but that's
it's on an album called Bowling for Soup Goes to the Movies.
Yeah.
So it's a weird inclusion because it's all like movie songs, which that album is, and that's tagged onto the end. And there's also a song called. Yeah, there's also a song called Sometimes, which I think is like the greatest Bowling for Soup song ever. And every time they say, oh, what song do you want to hear in the set list? I'm like, Sometimes. Got to play Sometimes. It's like, we never play that song. I was sick as a dog when I recorded that song. It's a huge
that one
tune.
In Belgium I like too. Like that I like all their stuff that's like kind of their obscure like to heart songs, and it's like they're so good. I mean, I love the hits, don't get me wrong, and they put on a killer show. I mean, sitting there in the audience and just being in like that was like probably my first like actual pit show. I mean, I saw Third Eye Blind in the pit. Like in the, but my first ever like going to a festival and just being there, and it was just so cool to see them. And it was like right after a band that was just a cover band here local, and then they came on after, and it was just like, man, I wish I was sharing that stage that night. You always get those dreams, and it's for me, it's been lucky. I've been enough to have Ken and John on one of my new songs from the Posies.
Yes,
and I'm just like, this is incredible, and it's like, oh boy, and it's just something that you never expect, And it's like the minute you're like able to actually hire them, it's like you've made it. They know who you are.
Unreal.
They know your songs and stuff like that. And it's just like I again did a song with Frankie too, and Frankie's a great guy, and we just had him on. I just finished editing that podcast actually this morning, and I was like, hey Rob, I'm good to go anytime now because I finished editing. So, and then we have one coming up with the Licorice Quartet. With Eric Dover, Roger, and Joseph Manning
Eric
Jr.
is a talent. Dude.
Oh yeah, I'm good friends with and Tim Smith too. But I keep forgetting to mention Tim. I'm sorry, Tim. The next question for you is I wanted to talk about your business, Arcade Frames, on Etsy. What started that?
Strangely, someone gave me like what is essentially the similar kind of thing which I do now as a Christmas gift. It's basically just what they call a box frame, but with like Lego minifigures in there, and it had all these horror characters. Like, oh, this is cool. This is awesome. I think I could do it a little bit better.
There you go.
Yeah. So that was the kind of thing. I just started looking online. You can buy all the little figures. I mean, Lego's huge. It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
I mean, they do like Lego figures for everything these days.
And I think you can make custom ones now from the website too and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of I'm trying to move more into that kind of way of it.
Exactly what you need. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started making those, buying the figures, all these little horror figures like Freddy Krueger, and I found some Lost Boys ones, all kind of stuff which I'm really into, and started selling them, making a small Etsy shop, and people seem to really like them, and a lot of people do them, but I mean, it's, as you know, 80s movies and early 90s movies, it's a big passion of mine. So I think that shows in the work I do on these frames. And I started doing like little Comic Cons, and people really got off on them. So I'm trying to expand it even more now. I mean, I was working for a print company for like 20 years or so, and I recently quit that job to kind of focus more on both the podcast and the frames. So that's kind of the route which I'm going down. But the whole COVID thing put pay to Comic Cons for a few months, so hopefully later this year they'll be back. But Arcade Frames, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm moving, but I always get the most random requests from people. I've got like 50 or 60 different designs in my store, and someone says, "Oh, but can you do a such and such one?" I like some more random requests. Someone's got me to do a Rush, you know, the band Rush from Canada. Yeah. I'm like, freaking Rush, like they've not got the most, I don't know what the word is, but when you think of them, you don't think of the characters of the band like you do Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. So I'm like, how do I do this? But I did it. I managed to do a Rush one, and
challenge yourself.
Yeah. And someone requested the film Streets of Fire. I don't know if you know that from the 80s.
No, I'll have to check that
I'd never seen it. I'm like, what the hell's this?
Yeah. And it's good because then you get to check out something. Gives you something to check out too.
Exactly. And that film actually held up. I was quite impressed.
Ooh, there you go. Yeah, I like I really like the journal, the notebook. My girlfriend's keeping it in the wrap there because that was another thing too. The added on like looking like it was in a store from the 80s with the plastic.
Oh, sweet, man.
I was like, that is sick. And she was like, I'm not opening this now. I'm like, yeah, don't. I said I would keep. It's like one of those things that if I was to buy it, I would put it, like, just keep it on the shelf and stuff. But she's so happy because Army of Darkness is one of her all-time favorite movies, so it worked out.
Well, that
really
all kind of expanded from. I've got a project called Straight to Video, which obviously ties in with the name of the podcast, but that was all started about almost getting on for 10 years ago now, but that's doing like movie soundtrack cover songs. That's where the Straight to Video name came from. And then I kind of...
Okay. Oh, that links to 2 and 2, because you sent me 2 of the singles there and stuff. And that's right, really cool. Oh, all right.
So the podcast is kind of an extension for that. It's my way of getting everything retro, 80s and 90s all under one.
Well, we'll definitely have to have you on when we do our podcast. We're still trying to figure out. Our first episode is going to probably be Say Anything, is what we've been talking about, because it's our movie. It became that I realized I am very much like Cusack as a person. So I was like, oh boy. So I was like, it's a good movie. As a person in the character in the movie, I should say. Not as him, but as the character in the movie. But I love John Mahoney too. And I was so, rest in peace. I love Frasier. So I was just so excited to see him in that role. And I was just like, oh man, there's just so many good sitcoms from the 90s, stuff like that too, that we could talk about later on, like Wings. So there's just so much things we could talk about on the podcast. So I'm kind of, it'd be good to take a break from the music one, just because music is my life. So it's good to have something, another hobby.
Yeah.
Driven by her. So at least she's involved and have fun with it. And I have the setup at home to put 2 mics in so we could record at the same time.
Oh, that'll be great.
So
it's always good to revisit those films as well.
Yeah. Oh, and it's fun because then you get the movie night out of it. You got a date night out of it, and then you got the podcast, the business side of it, so it works out good. So I'll move on to the last question, which will probably be a good one to end with, and really glad to have you on. We'll have to have you on again when we do some of the movie stuff, or we usually do band chats too, where we have a bunch of people come on and talk about one band, and we try to get like other connections involved. And I'm looking for guest co-host at some point, so I'll reach out to you if you would want to co-host or something.
Available at any time.
Awesome.
Just ask.
Oh, sweet. That'd be great, because with the co-host on break, I like to. It's kind of like having the Jeopardy, what they're doing now with Alex gone, rest in peace too. Having the people come on and guest co-host. So it's like, all right, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna have guest co-hosts that have been on the show before come up and maybe interview somebody new, so then they have a connection. People involved. I like doing that. So I'm gonna reach out to Ken at some point and be like, "Hey, you want to co-host? Do something different? That'd be so cool." Yeah. So my last question for you is, what is your? We'll do this one first. What's your favorite movie of all time?
You can't ask people that
I
question.
know. That's why I said top 5. That was my second question. Was the top 5 80 movies of all time. But that's a tough one too, especially for movie lovers such as ourselves.
I had to think about it. Favorite movie of all time. I mean, I can't answer it.
I got you.
I can't answer that question. But there's a couple of films which I do constantly revisit, and I've got the actual movie posters in our hallway.
That's cool.
And that's. And as we're talking about music, they're both music-related films, but Almost Famous.
Great movie.
Never fails. The Cameron Crowe
movie.
Oh. And I always go just to the original cut, not the director's cut. I think everything's in there, what you need to see. And I always cry at the right moments and laugh at the right moments.
Same here, and that's a good movie.
Oh, man, it's amazing. I watched it in the last 12 months and loved it as much. I think I love it more every time.
Yeah, because you find something more to appreciate about it.
Oh, God, yeah.
And I feel like we're the main character, like both of us. Like the fact that like this young journalist just trying to be, and I feel like I can identify as the character as much. And with you having the fanzine stuff is really cool. And it's just like similar type thing. And it's like Cameron Crowe's just, and you realize it's like, oh, this is his life. This is his.
Exactly.
It's like even cooler. It's like, oh, this is awesome. And I love Cameron Crowe. I mean, hey, Say Anything, directed by Cameron Crowe as well. So
there you go.
Like, oh, there we go.
And it feels so real. Everything about that film, just that those early scenes where he first meets Stillwater, and the Kate Hudson grabs his hand and takes him to the side of the stage as the lights go down, and it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it now. So Almost Famous is up there, and I'm also a fan of the film Backbeat. Sutcliffe, the original bass player.
I just watched that for the first time. That's a really good film because a lot of people forget about Stewart too, and it's like,
oh man, I've got a tattoo of him on my arm.
There you go.
Yeah, his story is just the whole Backbeat story. I know they obviously took some liberties because it's a film. It's got to be entertaining.
Yeah.
So there are some elements which perhaps aren't true, but if you just take the blueprint of his story, it is almost like a movie script. It's unreal. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
And Stephen Dorff is amazing in that role as well. So if I had to pick two films which I can constantly watch and probably watch every year, I would probably pick those two.
And for me, it's That Thing You Do and Scott Pilgrim. My two.
Oh, nice.
I feel like Scott Pilgrim helps around my age group type thing, but it's for everybody. And it's just great, though, because it's for everybody. It's retro. It's everything. And then That Thing You Do is just because I love the 60s bands, and it's just a perfect cast. Steve Zahn, everybody, and including just like all these guys that, I like how I mentioned Steve Zahn only, but there's other members. But I just love that movie. The soundtrack being Adam Schlesinger, rest in peace. Wow. I was so upset about that. We did a Fountains of Wayne chat right around the time that happened with Eric Barrow and Tony Goldmark came on the podcast, and we did that, and it was just, part of me was like dying inside because it's just like Adam's not around anymore.
That kid wrote everybody,
so many movie soundtracks. I'm watching a movie like I forget what the name of the movie was. It was with Hugh Grant and Drew Barrymore, and I can't.
Okay.
Music and Lyrics.
Music and Lyrics.
Yeah, that is. And at the end, I'm like, this sounds like Adam, and I was like, it was Adam. And it was like, that's so cool.
I always remember Fountains of Wayne, one of those bands which got me through the 90s, and the first ever time I played, let's say, a proper electric gig. We were waiting to go on stage. I don't even remember if it was for the sound check or for the actual show itself, but before we started playing, this song was blasting over the PA speakers. And I was like, what is this? And it was Radiation Vibe by Fountains of Wayne. I was like, this is the most glorious melodic hook I've ever read in my life.
Quit the gig. This is it. I'm going home and buying a record. I gotta go.
Yeah, I need to find out what this song is.
I know for me, it was like I didn't even hear. I love all of that Mid-State Managers. I think that's the name of the album. I'm trying to remember the name of the proper name of the album. I think that's it. Yeah. But it's just like such a good album, and it's not just for Stacy's mom, which is funny that we mentioned Bowling for Soup. I love that they were the ones that were considered the one, like people thought they were the ones that wrote it, and it's like, no, it's Fountains of Wayne.
Have you had the Bowling for Soup version?
Yeah, they did it live too. They've done it live. And they always bring up the joke. They're like, well, since you think we wrote it, here it is. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Genius.
And it's like, it's just something so cool to have. you know, and run with it. Hey, if you have any gimmick that makes you run with something, you run with it, and it's just so cool.
They're smart like that.
They don't need a gimmick either, which is awesome. Like incredible band too, and a lot of people.
But
probably
Adam wrote with Bowling for Soup as well.
Really, I did not know that.
Never End.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the song High School Never Ends. That's a co-write with Adam, I believe. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Hey, that explains more why I like that song. Okay. But it's just like songs like that, and it's just I love even the acoustic stuff Jarrett does. It's like, oh, so good.
Yeah.
Just such good emotions and feelings. And I think through high school, that was what I really needed, was like Bowling for Soup, Good Charlotte, MCR, of course, emo in me here, but that was my.
You've been posting some All American Rejects stuff as well.
Oh yeah, I love All American Rejects. I got two. I actually saw them live. I want to say that was 2018, 19. I can't remember. It was with Dashboard Confessional, them, the Main, and this band called the Social Animals were the surprise opener. Like the very didn't get listed, and they were incredible. They blew me away too. I was like, yo, the whole night was incredible, and it's just so cool that. I love I really like All American Rejects. It's just been a huge fan. I can't wait for their new album. Everybody's waiting. I'm waiting for the new Posies album. It's some information on Frankie's podcast will be out about the new Posies album. He spilled some details.
Sweet.
So it's just been very cool to have all this news that we're all just waiting. Oh, it's just like, I'm glad we have some. I think it's the time for like a lot of local bands now with everything going on to shine, especially here.
Yes.
There's not a lot of big bands coming around because they're not going to tour unless they know that they can get a ton of money in, and because they have to, it's expensive. Where local bands are like eager to do anything right now, and the bars are coming back, and it's like, all right, we got to just take it easy. But at the same time, I can't wait to be playing again. It's just so much.
It's going to be interesting as to what. Because I think the landscape's going to change slightly as people's approach, and bands are maybe going to do things differently and take a different approach. So
yeah,
it might be quite exciting.
I mean, there's more now that we have a lot of access to bands. You can go on Facebook and they're live streaming, and you don't have to pay tickets sometimes. Sometimes you do, and it's like, but it's still cool that we have that option. You know, we're taking advantage. We as humans adapt pretty quickly, and we took advantage of a source that's always been there. But given time, it wasn't perfected till now. I think and it's still not perfect, but live streams have bugs and stuff. But at least you could still see bands like at home, in comfort of home, because you have to have live music. It's just as much as you have to have comedy too.
For sure,
you need both.
There's so many ways to support bands as well these days. I said the landscape's changing, and it's exciting. Yep,
I've used Bandcamp forever. I love when people post about like you should. I like streaming services are good. You get your song out there, but man, if you need to financially be supported, it is not the way. Oh my God. Bandcamp is perfect.
Excellent.
But thank you, Rob, for coming on. Really, it was great
oh man,
you're
welcome. Anytime you want to talk about either music or
I'll just call you one time and even just talk.
Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Rob Lane. Check out his podcast, links down below on the YouTube channel version of this. And if you're listening on Anchor, check out our YouTube channel and sub. All the links are usually on there. And if you're on Spotify, Anchor puts all there everywhere. But also, thank you all for supporting the Jebb and Green cast, brought to you by RoboJack Records. More to come soon.